Okay, so leaks. Let's talk about leaks. Last night, apparently, there was a big leak of Resident Evil 9. This was actually while I was streaming yesterday, which, by the way, will be continuing shortly after this video goes up tonight. So be sure to check out that. We're going to be finishing the director's cut run of Resident Evil 1. But anyway, back to the topic. Resident Evil 9 was supposedly leaked last night. And again, I do want to throw this out there. Resident Evil 9 is a long way away, probably 2 to 3 years away. So any leaks that come from that game right now, very, very doubtful it's real. Could be wrong, but I'm very, very skeptical. Also, in terms of the leak that went out last night, some of the points on there I've already seen before, a few months ago. I will point out which ones they are when we get to them. But not all of the things in that list is new. I think a lot of people are kind of thinking everything in that list is new. It isn't. There's some on there that have been going around for months now. And I'll mention which ones they are when we get to them. But some of them are new. Some of them are interesting. And we'll be checking it all out regardless. And kind of laying out our thoughts and stuff. So without any further ado, let's get into the supposed Resident Evil 9 leak. So first off, let's talk about the title and the setting of the game. Now the title is something that's been floating around literally forever. And it's Resident Evil Apocalypse. I don't know if I like that or not. It sounds cool. It could fit the tone of the game, but I don't know if I kind of like that. I'm always trying to think now, since Resident Evil 7, where they can fit in the numeral for the number. It's really annoying. Obviously, Village and 7, they fit the Roman numeral for the number in the title. And obviously 9 is IX. Wouldn't fit Apocalypse. It might do. They might find a way to get it in there. But, it's a decent title, it sounds cool, but I don't know if I really like it. In terms of the setting, we'll go into that now. So the setting of this game is supposed to be in a small town in the west, where there's like camps, caves, rivers and stuff like that. More of a rural location, kind of like Village again, more rural. Also mentions it's going to be kind of surrounded by forest as well. Again, very reminiscent to Village, an isolated small town in the woods. So it kind of sounds very repetitive if that's what they're doing for the setting, so again, something to be concerned about. I've actually heard the small town part of this leak before. Kind of gives me Silent Hill vibes from the previous leak, because I think the previous leak mentioned it was going to be like a ghosty, foggy town, which is literally straight up Silent Hill. So again, very skeptical about that part. Next up, the enemies and the enemies you'll be fighting in the game. Now this one, again, I've seen a bit of it before. So basically, what the link suggests for the enemies is enemies will look some kind of deformed in terms of body horror. So they're going to be a bit more deformed, maybe missing limbs, elongated limbs and stuff like that. And it also says they will resemble mythological creatures with horns, kind of like Wendigos or the Goatman. So the Wendigos, to kind of give you a brief kind of what they look like, if you played Until Dawn, and if you've seen like the end part of the game, without going in too depth into spoilers, you'll know what they look like. They kind of have like elongated limbs, very human looking, and pretty creepy as well. So, I mean, it sounds cool. I definitely can kind of see how they would fit, especially with the tone of the games at the moment in terms of enemies. Obviously 7, you've got Molded. 8, you've got werewolves and vampires, which, to be honest, I will be honest right now, with Village, when I heard that vampires and werewolves were going to be the enemies, I was very concerned with the game, but I'm glad that they kind of kept it in check. And next up, this is something new. This is something that actually sounds pretty interesting, and I would actually like to see. So this is a bit of a long one, so I'll go through it kind of slowly. Enemies will be mimicking human voices and could even transform into friendly NPCs. They can perfectly mimic human voices, and the players will be forced to look at their behaviour to know if they're enemies or not. Now this is an interesting one, because if you can kind of look through the Resident Evil series as a whole, in terms of side characters, there's not really many friendly NPCs in the game. Well, let's look. Apart from like your Carlos and your Ashley and your Sherry and stuff like that, there's not really any friendly NPCs apart from like the merchants and stuff like that. So them introducing, like, I'd imagine because of that, they're going to introduce probably a good amount of NPCs around you that maybe, you know, there'll be more people to interact with in the game, or side characters in the game. Because Resident Evil, apart from its main cast of that game, doesn't really have many extra characters in it. And if they do, they die very quickly. Look at Resident Evil Village. You meet like 5 or 6 people at the very start of the game, and they all die in about 2 minutes. So, it's an interesting one. It does continue to go on about how NPCs will work. It does say monsters can get close to the player, appearing as a friendly NPC. If that NPC has died and the player didn't see, they can kind of take their form and you wouldn't know if it was them or not. Again, kind of leans into the NPC side of things. Maybe they can die, maybe there's ways to save them throughout the game, who knows. Next up it goes into talk about a forest location in the game. The forest is creepy and unsettling. It's easy to get lost without a map. Sometimes you'll hear that somebody is walking behind you, but when you turn there's nothing there, and then sometimes you turn and it'll be there, like actually there for real, which is pretty cool. That'll definitely add a bit more horror to the game. Next one does say that players can force down doors to open them, lock them, barricade doors, and use melee weapons that are breakable over time. Kind of sounds like they're kind of improving on what 2 Remake and Village did, where you can kind of move shelves in front of doors and stuff to stop people from getting through. What does it say here? So the next one is bosses. One of the early bosses is the Barghest. It's a giant black dog with a twist, but less intelligent compared to other monsters. Interesting one. A big dog. That sounds kind of odd. Like, I do want to throw that out there. That does sound kind of odd. But, again, I'm taking all of this with a bit of doubt. Next up it goes into talk about some of the friendly characters and the enemy characters in the game. It starts with one of the main antagonists will be a woman named Glastig, which is what she's called by the locals of the game. She has a really beautiful design with green and gold ornaments and a morning green gown. That's all it really says. So an enemy is a woman again, probably going to lean into the Dimitrescu again and try and make her like be the simp magnet, I guess. Also, the player will receive help from a bioweapon named Hulda. She serves as a guide from the forest, tells you some of the town's history when you show her some treasures, and she will also teach the player different herb combinations. There are 7 types of herbs in this game, which is a lot more than normal, and monsters fear this woman just as much as they respect her, so that's also something that's on that list as well. So that's basically all it says. In terms of going over it bit by bit, again, some of what is on that list I've already seen before. I think these links came up around Christmas time, about the Wendigos and the town specifically. This just seems to be more kind of involved with that. In terms of the gist of the game, it sounds completely separate to Resident Evil Village. What I mean by that is due to the location and what it seems to be showing you in terms of enemies and stuff, it sounds like it's gone completely the other way. Obviously, with the ending of Village, it does kind of set something up, and this doesn't sound like it's actually continuing with that story, which is a concern, because the setup at the end of Village is really, really interesting, and if they do just kind of ignore that, that's going to be really annoying to me, and probably a lot of people who like the original story of like the BSAA and stuff like that. So this doesn't outright say that they are ignoring it, but that's quite a shift in terms of location, enemies, and stuff like that. It's a big difference. The positives from this though, I do like the sound of the whole enemies mimicking player voices and stuff like that. That's really cool. Mimicking human voices, sorry, and sounding like NPCs you've seen, sounding like characters you kind of have met along the way, as well as the forest section where it says that you can hear footsteps around you, and sometimes when you turn to look, there's nothing there, and sometimes there will be. Hopefully that is some kind of randomizer, so that, you know, you can get a good jump scare in there every now and again, because that sounds like it's fresh to the series. I will say that. I don't think any of the games have done that yet, which is really good, and again, does give me massive Silent Hill vibes, because the audio effects in Silent Hill are kind of like that, and it's really effective. I have mentioned Silent Hill a bit in this video, and to be honest, that's kind of the vibe I'm still getting from this leak. It sounds like someone wants to cross the two together, like a ghost town in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by woods. That's not really Silent Hill, but the ghost town part is very much Silent Hill. In terms of the audio being the more fear factor of the game as well, that's a big thing in Silent Hill, like I just mentioned, with the audio effects and stuff in those games. And then, obviously, Silent Hill does have a lot more characters you meet along the way as well, unlike Resident Evil, which is quite kind of very inclusive of like the main cast itself. So it does sound like someone's trying to merge the two together. But let me know what you think. Let me know if you believe any of it, if you don't want any of it to be true. If some of it sounds interesting, do let me know, because some of it does genuinely sound cool. I'm not bashing all of it at all, but I guess we'll wait and see. But like I mentioned, there's a long time to wait. We've got the Village DLC coming out in a few months. We've got Reverse coming out at the same time. Resident Evil 4 remake in March next year, as long as there's no delays, and then you're probably looking at Resident Evil 9. So you're looking at 2024, 2025 maximum, I think. So that's going to do it. Remember to leave a like on the video and subscribe for more Resident Evil content as and when there is news and any things I make for myself. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.